All over the world, business leaders are getting a masterclass in change as the pandemic reshapes every aspect of our operations and our lives. Some of the biggest challenges have been strategizing to keep customers engaged, at the same time keeping employees motivated and productive. We're recognizing that an organization's survival and growth depend on it. I'm Leandro Perez, Vice President of Marketing for Salesforce Asia Pacific, and I'm excited to be hosting the Salesforce Executive Conversation Series, where we talk to Salesforce global executives on their perspectives and experiences working with thought leaders across the globe. We've had so many incredible conversations. If you've missed an episode, you can catch up at sfdc.co/conversations. Today, I'm talking with Salesforce Global Growth and Innovation Evangelist, Tiffani Bova. Tiffani has watched events unfold through a very broad lens. She's been a sales, marketing, and customer service practitioner in both Fortune 500 companies and startups, primarily in tech. As an analyst at Gartner, she advised some of the biggest names in tech, leaving her fingerprints on billions of dollars worth of go-to-market successes. And now, 6 years into her tenure at Salesforce, an author, an awarded management thinker, she's uniquely positioned to talk about growth trends and technology's role in it all. Welcome, Tiffani.
Oh, Leandro, thank you for having me. There is no place I'd rather be except sitting next to you on that couch.
Where are you joining us from today, Tiffani?
I am joining you from Los Angeles, California.
Well, LA, love it. Love a little bit of LA. So look, tell us a little bit just to get the audience going, that we've got the bio there, but a little bit about yourself. You know, where did you shine at school to take it all the way back?
Oh, where did I shine at school? It was not academics. Let me just say that. I was thankfully an athlete. That sort of kept me very, very busy. I was born and raised in Hawaii, which I think is a fun fact because the Pacific Rim has been home to me for a really long time.
We've had a few other folks from the Salesforce team join us from Hawaii, so that is definitely represented. So tell us then another fun fact, maybe growing up, the best lesson your parents taught you that you still remember back?
Oh, don't sweat the small stuff, for sure, for sure. You know, when you're a little kid, you just kind of don't understand with everything coming at you, what's really most important. And so they used to tell me that. Actually, my grandfather did. And he would, also say patience is a virtue, which I'm still not mastered, but working on it, still working on it.
Wise words. I like both of those, actually. So now we've been in this time where, you're joining us from an amazing room there. I can see the books keep rising over there. Tell us, do you have a guilty pleasure during this time?
I would say, not traveling has been very unusual for me. 2020, my very last sort of in-person trip was at World Tour Sydney, and then the world sort of stopped, got out of there just in time. And so not traveling has really thrown me for a loop because that fly time and idle time in the back of a car, sitting in a lobby was really when I did most of my thinking. So I had to try to find a way to continue to replicate that without being in the air. So I started doing a lot of hiking and, being in Southern California, thankfully we've got amazing weather most of the time. Today it's raining, but, usually that's what I do as my guilty pleasure in the afternoons.
Very interesting, that forced time we used to have in a metal tube in the sky. The Wi-Fi came later, so some of that went away, but it is interesting you had to find that. Is that linked? Now, we're going to talk a little bit about this later. You are obviously an author. You've written many books. Is that the time that you used to come up with ideas? Any tips for folks out there that might be wanting to write a book themselves?
That is actually where I wrote the book. One of the things I joked was I wrote it at 35,000 feet. I didn't plug into the Wi-Fi. I really used the time to actually hand edit my book, printed paper, hand edit with different color pens, moving things around, because it was really that time where my phone wasn't ringing. I didn't have someplace to be, obviously. And that rushing was for a moment, 1 hour, 3 hours, 10 hours. If I was coming to see you, it could be 12, 13 hours to Hong Kong or Singapore. That uninterrupted sort of no rush time really gave me a chance to work on the book.
Well, hopefully we'll be able to bring some of that back to you in the future. We never know. We don't know what we don't know about the pandemic here.
That's true.
So let's jump right in, Tiffani. So we've been talking about customer experience as the battleground for some time, but employee experience has become much more important during this pandemic. Where are you at in that thinking of that? Have you been doing some research in that potentially?
Well, there's a few things. I was fortunate enough in my previous role as a research fellow at Gartner to be part of the team that made this wild prediction. I think it might even be 10 years ago now that the chief marketing officer would spend more than the chief information officer on technology. It was like blasphemy. But what was interesting, Salesforce and most of its competitors all went out and made acquisitions to get their hands on that part of the stack that was going to satisfy the marketer who was looking to not only improve the experience of buying online, but also the experience in general with the brand and what that was going to look like. And that was the beginning of this conversation of customer experience becoming the new battleground. I knew that customers would remember the experience they had with a brand much longer than the price they paid. I mean, we see it sort of every day in our everyday normal lives. If you went to a restaurant and the food was good, but the service was excellent, would you go back? If the food was really good and really expensive and the service was terrible, would you go back? The answer to that really lands on this whole concept of customer experience being that new battleground and customers looking at the experience they're getting from companies actually at about 80% as important as the products and services that they in fact sell. So there's so much there to unpack, but really I think this pandemic has highlighted the fact that the differences between our personal B2C experiences was very different than that on the personal side for B2B, and how the blending of those two things with this new super consumer that it has this expectation of personalized, real-time, 24/7, responsive, able to do things very, very quickly online and from anywhere means that businesses have to keep pace. And it's been amazing to see the investments that have been made on the customer side. But as you said, Leandro, it actually was kind of in spite of investments that should and could be made around the employee. And I think that that's something that I missed a decade ago. And really in reality, I missed with Growth IQ as well, which is my book. And I've come a long way on that, which I know we're going to talk about. But I would say that if you are working for a company that is hyper focused on CX and throughout the organization, to just understand it's not just sellers, it's not just marketers, it's not just customer service or customer success. The entire organization plays a part in delivering those compelling experiences to customers.
We're going to get into that employee experience space, but for folks that don't know about Growth IQ and the book that you released, can you give them some tips on, what did the research they say there so that we can build on that?
Sure. Listen, my role was over the decade that I was at Gartner was to advise companies on how to grow, how to improve and optimize the way they sell, how to modernize their go-to-market models, and then how to invest in through and with partners, so selling indirectly. So it was always about growth. But I would often hear from companies around the globe that, we're facing a growth stall. Either growth is declining, and I'm talking about top line here, growth. Growth is declining, or it's even flat. We don't know what to do. And I can tell you, the largest selling organizations, specifically talking about tech, top 3 size selling organizations would say this to me. And then they'd say, what do you think we should do? Should we hire more salespeople, spend more marketing dollars, or potentially even cut costs? Like, is that the way we can sort of get ourselves back to the growth rates we were looking for? And I truly believed it was more than just those 3. So I went out and did some, investigating on what are the motions and investments and strategies companies have used for the last 50, 60, 70 years on growing their business cross industry. And I found 10 paths to growth. Now, I want to be really clear here. I didn't make them up. They're not my 10. But what I did was I modernized those that had been used for some time, like sell more of existing products to existing customers, sell new products to existing customers, sell existing products to new customers, sell new products to new customers. Like that Ansoff matrix is from, 65 years ago, but I modernized it using big data, cloud, AI, VR, right? Data sets, all kinds of things that we didn't have access to, social, mobile, cloud. And that allowed me to say, look, it's not that the strategies have changed. It's very similar to jobs to be done, where the jobs remain similar, but the solution, how to do those jobs, is what has changed. And so that was really where I spent my time. Was I didn't want to reinvent the wheel. I wanted to give people a window into choices that they could make with the existing decisions and investments they already have in place. And how do we just outthink the competition by doing it better and more intentionally, using all the things that have now happened, specifically from a technology standpoint, over the last 20 or 30 years.
So look, let's come back to where you started, which was employee experience, and that it isn't just one department, it is cross-functional. But can we get a little deeper on that? Who really owns it? Is it the CEO then? Or, tell us about where your thinking's taken you.
Well, so a couple of things. When you talk about customer experience, it's really landed in almost a creation of a new role. I mean, the chief customer officer was probably maybe 7, 8, 10 years old. It wasn't around before. The chief marketing officer tends to say they own it. And I'm less interested in who owns it, because if that's the position, then that's about resources and that's about control, and it's about, what do I have to do? Forget about the rest of you. Instead of saying, hold on a second, philosophically, what is our position about how do we want to treat customers? So let's just sit there for a second. And everybody owning it. So, for example, I was taught at a very young age that customer experience has the power, and it's the little things. So I used to work at the carnival when I was in high school, when I was a teenager, and I also ran indoor video arcades. I'm really going to date myself. But anyway, it was about a 15,000 square foot store, which is fairly large. And it was the opening, and the owner, who was my best friend's mom, she was like my second mother, came in for the opening, and I was very proud of the store. We, worked really hard for 60 days. She says nothing to me after sort of saying hello to everybody. And all she did was point her finger up. And I was like, okay, does that mean number one? Does that mean I'm great? Like, what does it mean? And sure enough, I let my eyes sort of look up, and there was one light bulb out in the roof, in the ceiling, which was this big top tent. There was about 10,000 light bulbs up there. One was out. And that hyper focus on the little things. Now, who's responsible for that? Is that the chief marketing officer? Absolutely not. Like, that was somebody who worked in facilities at the location. And if they don't understand and take pride in what they're doing, that one light bulb sends a message. I'm sure many of you have driven down the street at night and you see the brands of companies and the lights are out, one letter's out in their name. Like, if they don't even care about their name being able to be, seen from a distance, what does that really say about the brand? So I think ownership is the wrong place to start. But I do believe there needs to be a metric, something that everyone can align around. So is it Net Promoter Score? Is it brand awareness, unaided awareness? What are the things that you're going to align everybody around? And that specifically is for customer. Now, on the employee side, that's where it's starting to get interesting. People are starting to spend a lot of time talking about, why is it we can't attract top talent? What are the things we're doing with our existing employees that might not be fostering commitment and loyalty amongst the employees that work for us today? Are we investing in their career development? Are we doing things they need to work remotely and be successful and feel safe and secure in their day-to-day lives? That kind of conversation wasn't happening consistently, 2-3 years ago. And so now the question is, who owns that employee experience? How do you connect employee and customer? Because the fastest way to get customers to love your brand is to get employees to love their job. Like, that's the fastest way. If they take pride and they love what they do, they're going to go that extra mile for the customer. And so that kind of connection, I think, is what's really exciting for me, coming out of the last 2 years of sitting and thinking about what's going to come up next for myself, as well as the work that I've been doing from a research perspective around this as well.
Well, firstly, thank you for sharing that story. I'm sure it took you back. I could see the emotion coming through in your face there. But it's full circle though, right? The one light bulb and you taking pride, and maybe at the time you didn't realize, but if you had,
correct,
taking pride that that's something that represents your work and the work of everyone on that team. It's a very simple but very interesting story.
Yeah, absolutely. That one light bulb right? And it's a metaphor for so many things. So yeah, I think about it all the time. And I was 22. So it was, almost 30 years ago. I mean, it's like it happened yesterday. And every time I use that example, I think people go, I get it. Something that simple.
So tell me then, okay, we're connecting employee experience with the customer experience. We said that it's ultimately, we want to make sure that the employee loves the brand that they work for, right? Because that's then going to bring all those results. But as a leader, how do we do that, right? How do we ensure that we can set by example the things that we want to happen in the organization so that this can set forth for an organization that you lead?
Yeah, Leandro, I'm going to start at the beginning. Look, it was a keynote I was giving in Vancouver, Canada, a number of years ago. And I said, I didn't think it was a coincidence that Salesforce is one of the best places to work globally. I think in 15 countries, it's number one. And in the remainder of the world, let's call it in the top 10. That it's one of the most innovative companies in the world. And these are other people's lists, not ours. And then the fastest growing enterprise software company. I didn't think there was a coincidence. And so I actually went to our previous CMO and I said, hey, I have this hypothesis I'd like to prove out. She said, go for it. So we did a study based in the US with Forbes Insight, as in the magazine Forbes. And what it found was that companies that aligned customer experience and had strong employee experience were 1.8x faster growth rate. So for $1 billion brand, it was a $40 million impact. Now, if you're listening to this and you're a $10 million brand, it's still a big impact, 1.8x. It's meaningful. And so what came out of that as well was, what is it that people are missing? Well, there isn't this sort of connection of metrics. The teams aren't aligned. A lot of the things we were just talking about. There isn't an understanding of who owns it. And then what are the things that actually play a part in an employee's experience and satisfaction? And I'd say that has drastically changed than when we did the survey, right? Because it was a little right at the time the pandemic was starting. And now, 2 years later, you could say that what drives employee engagement and satisfaction is very different. So that first study allowed me to take it around the globe and do executive roundtables and sort of pose this question and ask and listen and learn from what others have done. And sure enough, there was definitely two camps. Yes, we completely understand the power of aligning our employee to delivering, more innovation, going the extra mile, delivering compelling experiences, right? Working more closely as teams, being more collaborative, like all the benefits of that, and the result of it landing with the customer. And then the other side, the other camp of people was, boy, we just don't look at it that way at all. We've over pivoted where we are absolutely invested in customer experience, or we're absolutely invested in employee, but we're not investing in both with an equal level of focus. So that then sort of resulted in us doing a global study, which we just finished, including across APAC, Latin America, EMEA, as well as North America. And what has come back was validation on that, but also to find causation, that if you're going to make investments in employee, it will have a positive impact on customer. Those two things, sort of a multiplier of, you're going to get a greater growth rate out the other side of it. And so we're really trying to understand, look, it's at that intersection of the two. We're not going to talk about everything in employee, like who do we hire? How do we hire? Like, once they become an employee to the point in time when they may leave, that experience. And I'll give you one stat and then we can sort of dig into this, is MuleSoft had done some research about a year and a half ago that said the average enterprise had 900 apps, yet only 27% of them were integrated. So let's just talk about, I'm an employee. How many places do I need to go in order to answer a customer's question or to just do my job? Let's just focus on that as an experience. Is the CIO, the CMO, and the Chief Human Resource Officer, are they getting together to talk about this intersection? Pretty much nobody is doing that. The CIO is not in the conversation. So I think there's a ton of opportunity for us to sort of help guide forward what that kind of connection looks like and why it's important, and the way that you can do it at scale with some sense of predictability would be using technology.
It's fascinating, and I'd love to hear when you were on those roundtables and you presented that 1.8x stat, which is meaningful, like you said. Who got most excited? Surely the CEOs in the room got excited, and then it was probably that second tier that was like, well, we're all about the customer, and is that where you
Right.
saw the friction?
Right. Yes. Yes. I mean, it's the natural, right? And unfortunately, they always tend to default back to who's going to own it. And that is a resource conversation. And instead of saying, hold on a second, like, are our employees even happy? Are they engaged? Are they committed? Are they loyal? Why is it we can't attract talent right now in this war for talent? Why is this is a very US based comment, that great resignation. If we've had millions of people just resign because they're like, look, I want to work from home, or I don't align to the values of the company anymore, or whatever the reason may be, which I know is being seen in other parts of the world, maybe not to the level we have here right now. But there is a ton of signals that were there that were just being ignored. So once they start asking, okay, well, who owns it? I try to put that aside for a second. I go, let's just talk about it. What are your employee satisfaction scores today? How often do you do them? Oh, we do a survey once a year. It's like, okay, well, that's not going to tell you anything, right? And so I actually give Salesforce as an example. I say, look, when this happened, we didn't have things like Be Well and Leading Through Change and No Meetings Thursday and a Well-Being Friday, which we do globally. And that came from employees saying, I'm starting to feel burnt out. I'm feeling a little bit lost. I don't feel connected and I'm not able to collaborate. And so what could we do? And so I start to sort of talk through some of those things, and you start to see the light bulbs go on of all the things they are currently doing that they didn't maybe view in this lens, but also the things that they're potentially not doing. And then I kind of backed up because people would start to actually share what they were doing organizationally. And it's been inspiring to hear how many people were actually on this path already. And I'm excited to see where it's going to lead them, in the next 12, 24, 36 months.
That is interesting, where organizations might be already doing things and not see it in that light. Sometimes, as a marketer, it is the positioning or messaging or reinforcement of some existing activities. Can you share, obviously you shared the MuleSoft example, you've named a few that we do at Salesforce, some that you've found quite interesting or that are, wow, that's easy to do and anyone should be doing that.
Yeah, so I use this one all the time because I think it's a fun one. But I was having a conversation with one of the sharks. Actually, it's called Dragon's Den in Canada. So just like Shark Tank, right? And so Dragon's Den in Canada, and we were having a conversation. She goes, "Look, I started an email box. The stupid things we do at, like something that simple." So that an employee could go, look, I have to go here, and then I have to go there, and then I have to do this in order to do this one little thing. If we could just do this and this, I wouldn't have to do that anymore. And it would save me could be an hour a day. It's like, oh, I didn't know we made you do that. Or I didn't know those systems didn't talk with each other. So something that simple and that basic. As I mentioned, I just gave one of my very first in-person keynotes a few weeks ago. And while I was on stage and gave that example, one of the CEOs in the room actually sent a note to his IT team and said, set up this email box immediately, right? So that's something very easy. And then as time went on, sure enough, they just ticked off the ones that they could do very quickly and found buckets of sort of topics, if you will. But what they also did was they communicated back what they fixed. And if they weren't able to fix some things, why not? So all of a sudden, it created this level of commitment. It was kind of the unintended consequence of opening up that email box. All of a sudden made employees feel like they had a role to play in how happy they were at work every day. And it was miraculous. And she only has 50 employees. So I'm giving that as as an example of something that simple, that quick to open it up, communicate it out, and actually try to make the day-to-day lives of your people far more, easy for them, but also where they feel like they're participating in the success of the company.
That is a fun example. I mentioned there's many executives listening saying, oh my God, there's probably so many things my team do for me that I don't want them to tell me they don't want to do anymore. But no, it's a great example. And I love how you could come back and see some themes. And then the sharing back, I think ensuring that it's not a black box that it goes into is really the key there. So then tell me now, like we've covered a lot of ground here from your old research, but is still very relevant with Growth IQ, into this new area that you're touching into that is becoming more relevant with the pandemic that's changed all of our work experiences, really. You know, you're home at the moment, I've been home all this week. Tell me, what's something practical that leaders can go out and start thinking about today or this week to change and take advantage of this opportunity?
Look, at the end of the day, every company is focused on customer. It's hard to not have somebody say, we're totally focused on the customer. And everyone feels like they take care of their employees. And so I would ask you to just do an inventory. How much effort, time, energy, projects are focused on CX or customer experience? And then how much do you have focused on EX? I think you're very quickly going to start to see the imbalance. Now, it doesn't have to be minute for minute and dollar for dollar and person for person, but you want to make sure that you start to up level what you're doing for your employees. It cannot be the customer at the expense of everything else. So I want to say kind of employee first and customer centricity, because I think customer centricity, everyone understands. And I am trying not to use employee first because I don't like first, because then it implies that customer is second. Somehow we have to have kind of equal thought around them, and connective tissue between executives, whether it be metrics, whether it be organizational structure, whether it be the vision and values of the company. Like you have a customer one, like everything we do is about the customer, and then yet your employees might not be happy. And so I think that just understanding where your energy, effort, projects, as well as what do you have lined up for 2023 is really important. Because look, there's a really famous quote by Jeff Bezos that basically says, look, if we have a good quarter this quarter, it's not because of something we did yesterday. It's because of something we did 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. Decisions that get made well in advance of you actually seeing the fruits of your labor. And so the challenge with the ideas I've just put forward around CX and EX is, what is the return on that investment? If I'm going to redirect dollars, what am I going to get back? And that's where I think you have to start thinking differently about purpose over profit, right? And capitalism being, especially if you're a private company, you have a lot more flexibility of making those investments. But you'll see some of the biggest brands in the world, the most well-known brands in the world, according to the Edelman brand study or the trust barometer that Edelman puts out. You can see that there is correlation between those really great brands and what their employees are saying and where they rank on the best places to work and how innovative they are. And so really trying to understand that you have at your disposal people who chose to work for your company and customers who chose to do business with you. Now you have to figure out, how do you really nurture those relationships and put your best foot forward to deliver them those amazing experiences as a customer's employee, so they couldn't imagine being anywhere else.
Wow, we've covered so much today. Some of the takeaways I've just taken, and I think that the executives listening today will get so much from this. But just to summarize, I'd say starting off, customer experience is a huge area, and you have been a master in that domain. So if you want to get some tips, go and check out Growth IQ. I would probably start there as good advice. Second is that the employee experience is becoming, it's not that it wasn't ever important, but it's just kind of in the spotlight today in particular because of the pandemic. It's accelerated it. And to your point, it isn't that one is more important than the other, but almost equal, and they almost drive. They're symbiotic in sense. And that we can get started today. Something as simple as that suggestion box is something that we can all do. And it's true, it is owned by the whole organization, not just one individual. So Tiffani, with that, I want to thank you again. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Oh, so much fun. Thank you.
Some really incredible conversations we're having in this series. If you want to learn more about these topics or watch more episodes, visit sfdc.co/conversations. So far, we've covered, amongst other things, customer loyalty as the new currency, inclusivity and collaboration in our new world, effective decision-making, and today, as you saw, we had another riveting take on employee experience being as important as customer experience. Thank you for tuning in to our Executive Conversations. See you next time.
Do you want me with glasses off or glasses on? Glasses on are better because I can actually see you.
If you can see me, that's better. We can't see a reflection or anything.
Okay.
So.
Wait, hold that shot. I want to take a picture of this madness. All right.
With people on site.
Yeah. I'm like, humans. Wait, humans. Let me see humans.